In December 2011, Newmarket-based jockey Kirsty Milczarek was banned from horse racing on corruption charges. 4 months later, after an appeal, she's back. This is her story.
Angelina Ballerina, toe-to-toe inside the last. Angelina Ballerina's on top near the line. Angelina Ballerina. It's a double on the day for Kirsty Milczarek.
Microlight is going to see them off here. Microlight and Kirsty Milczarek win.
This is a pretty emotional time. Have you anything to say about the outcome?
Just there's a few issues, and I was found guilty on one particular thing, but it wasn't a ride, which I'm quite relieved about.
So you're definitely appealing?
Definitely appealing, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty.
Kirsty, you're informed in May 2011 that you'll be subject to a BHA, a British Horse Racing Authority, inquiry. That inquiry comes along in October, and in December you get an email or a phone call telling you that you could be exiled from the sport for upwards of 8 years. How does that feel?
Bit numbing, to be honest. I got the phone call and then decided I had to have a bath and get ready to go to Lingfield because I had rides that day. Obviously I had to check I was allowed to ride that day, and they gave me permission. But then obviously couldn't tell anybody. So I was pretty, well, I was gutted, obviously.
I mean, do you break down and cry? Do you find it almost unbelievable?
Yeah, unbelievable. I think I cried after I won on Microlight at Lingfield, because I knew obviously it was possibly my last winner. I still had a ride at Kempton, but it kind of sunk in when I come into the winner's enclosure. I think when Robert Cooper came up to me, it was pretty obvious to everybody I didn't want the camera there, and it was very emotional.
But you really felt at that stage, this is almost the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years is a long time, but I was looking, I didn't know how long I'd actually been given, and I was looking between 5 and 8 years at the time, and you know, 8 years for any jockey or 5 years is the end of your career, and I'd worked very, very hard for 8 years to get it going. So yeah, I kind of said goodbye to racing after that winner, really.
Kirsty Milczarek rode her first winner in September 2004 on Levantine at Lingfield.
Crimson Star pressed by Levantine, and Levantine got up to beat Crimson Star, and it was third.
But it was in 2008 that the ex-show jumper really burst onto the scene, notching up 71 victories and landing the leading apprentice title for the winter season. 2 quieter campaigns followed, but in 2011 she was back on an upward curve, racking up 35 successes and building a good relationship with Saigon, who after this victory at Yarmouth went on to finish a close third in the Group 2 Mill Reef Stakes at Newbury.
Saigon has the lead. Justinio this seat fights back. Saigon might just beat the favourite here. Coming towards the line. Photo. Saigon, I think, has got it.
However, the British Horse Racing Authority had long been taking a careful look at the ride she gave OB Gold at Lingfield in 2009. Coming out of stall 10, OB Gold was awkward leaving the boxes and slowly away. He eventually stayed on into 5th without troubling the leaders. OB Gold had been heavily laid by individuals the BHA was also investigating, and questions had been asked why the horse's hood had been removed several seconds before the race began, rather than left to the last minute, supposedly compromising his chance. Telephone records suggested Milczarek had been in contact with those who had gained from the defeat. The BHA's case evolved around your ride of OB Gold at Lingfield and the removal primarily of his blindfold. The blindfold was removed earlier than trainer Debbie Mountain wanted. How do you explain what happened that day?
When I spoke to Debbie Mountain, she said he could get a bit unruly to leave the blind on for as long as possible. I was in early, the horse was getting agitated. I heard the assistant starter saying all in. The assistant starter raised his hand started walking behind us where he raises his hand. And with that, usually the starter says, jockeys, blinds off, and you're gone, and it's split second, you know, and I wanted to be ready to make sure the horse would jump. Debbie had also said that was, you know, important, that he jumped well, because he'd often been slow away, missed the break. I pulled the blind off, but two stalls up from me, another horse started to be unruly, which delayed the start of the race. That is where the problem happened. But when the gates opened, my horse was settled, standing. He didn't have a hood on, and he jumped to the left, but he was settled and he was standing, ready for when the race went off.
You mentioned the disturbance in a berth 2 stalls away from you, Kirsty. There seems to be a real problem with finding the footage of that incident.
Yeah, there was certain bits of evidence that would have helped my case. I just couldn't find them. I mean, right from the beginning, I was never saying I was never worried. I always cooperated with everything, all the interviews, phone records, everything. And I wasn't worried because I knew I'd done nothing wrong. But as we gradually went into it and I tried to get the evidence myself to help my legal team, I couldn't find things. Videotapes. I approached the doctor at Lingfield and asked for the medical records to say that I'd injured my shoulder. They'd been thrown away by cleaners. That's when I started getting worried, because I just thought, hang on a minute, 2 and 2 isn't equaling 4 here. And, you know, I then started to worry and thought, I'm going to struggle now to prove my innocence.
So in many ways, I mean, if this was a BBC drama, you could almost suggest there was evidence disappearing. You couldn't find the details to back up your case.
Yeah, definitely. Either it wasn't there, or, you know, it just couldn't be found. I'm not going to point the finger at anybody, but, you know, it's over now and it's finished. But I was very, very worried at that time. As
well as the problem with the hood, you suffered a shoulder injury, I believe, during the stalls incident. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when the gates opened, the horse has launched himself. Anybody that's seen the rerun of the race will see what happened. And the upright of the stall, which is obviously metal, hit me straight across the collarbone. Now, you can see on the tape, I put my arm out twice to see if I can move my arm. I'm in a 6 furlong race. There's not a lot of time in those races to A, check your shoulder or your collarbone isn't broken, and B, to get, ride a very good race on a horse.
Subsequently, the BHA, I believe, found you innocent of the shoulder problem, i.e. they believed, for want of a better phrase, your story about the shoulder. But the British Horse Racing Authority didn't believe the incident about the hood coming off the horse. And they felt that because there had been phone calls between yourself and a chap called James Crickmore,
yeah,
who owned that horse and was found guilty of laying the horse in that race, i.e. to lose.
I didn't know he owned the horse.
Right.
It ran in Debbie Mountain's colours, so she owned it and trained it as far as I was concerned. I didn't know he owned the horse. I said that right from the beginning.
As well as the hood problem, the BHA's case evolved around the fact that you had been speaking on the phone to James Crickmore. But it seems that you would suggest that, in fact, James Crickmore was calling your phone to get hold of your partner at the time, Kieran Fallon.
Yeah, Kieran was driving me. He was on his own suspension. He would drive me to all the meetings, especially double meetings. It's tough. You speak to any jockey that has to go and ride 2 meetings a day, 7 days a week, and ride work in the mornings. You get tired, and if somebody offers to drive you, then you're not going to turn it down. It's expensive to pay a driver. So I had Kieran, and obviously advice as well on how to ride my races on the way there is invaluable, you know.
The initial ban handed out to Milczarek will have stunned many racegoers. But what about those who supported her?
I think everyone was shocked, really. She's always been a very hard and conscientious worker, and I've known Kirsty since she first came into the trade when she was a young apprentice, and she rode for my father then, and applied a trade very well with throughout her career. I think I think she's always been very loyal to the yard as well. She was always the first to be there to ride work if we needed her, and yeah, I think it's a big shock when somebody gets dragged into something like that. She's been a big asset to me. She's ridden me a lot of winners and helped prepare a lot of good horses. Myself, Luca, and a number of other trainers have been using Kirsty's regularly to ride work for us, so we'll be happy to have her back.
Luca, Kirsty's back. How pleased are you to see her again?
Very pleased. She's a lovely girl. She's very dedicated, loves her job, loves riding horses, and she's had this period of bad luck, if you like, where she was found guilty on very, very, very flimsy evidence, most of which centered on the fact that she apparently removed the hood from a horse that's known to be bad in the stalls. I can't remember now, but it was 20, 30, 40 seconds before the off. And it's such a silly evidence that, because I know she's brave, but she wouldn't be that stupid to remove the hood on a horse that could actually get her injured in the stalls by throwing himself about. So that was obviously a genuine mistake, that she removed the hood too early. And on that basis, to assume that that was a way of getting the horse beaten in this great big conspiracy, I think it was incredibly flimsy and incredibly unjust.
Luca Comani has suggested that the idea of a jockey deliberately taking a blindfold off a horse early to cause problems in the stalls would be madness. Effectively, you'd be risking your life to do so.
Yeah, it'd be, you know, it's complete madness. You wouldn't do it. You just wouldn't do it. Mistakes do happen. You know, I've taken a blind off at the wrong time. Unfortunately, in that case was one of the times. But it happens every day of the week. You watch enough racing. Do you know what I mean? You know mistakes are made every single day. You cannot ride thousands of races and be spot on 100% of the time.
So the British Horse Racing Authority have warned you off. Your relationship with Kieran Fallon was on the rocks by this stage, December 2011. Your world was falling down around you.
Yeah, you know, I had my own personal battle with kind of accepting a 4-year relationship that I'd put a lot of effort into was falling apart around me as well, you know, and it's despite what anybody else's opinion was on mine and Kieran's relationship, we know how we were behind closed doors, and, you know, when it was good, it was great, and when it was bad, it was pretty bad, you know, but I hope one day we're going to be great friends, and, you know, just wish him all the best.
Kieran, of course, has had his own brushes with authority along the way. Do you feel in any way your association with the former champ was part of why the British Horse Racing Authority inquired into what was going on with Obi Gold, etc.?
I think I'd be silly to say no, wouldn't I? I think, I'm not saying that was the whole reason, but, you know, I made a decision when I first started going out with Kieran, you know, and my career was flying, and it did go south a little bit, you know, quite a lot, but then, I don't know, it's difficult. I'd be silly to say that it was nothing to do with my association with him.
So you've worked really hard throughout your life to become a jockey, and now you're exiled from the sport. How does that feel?
Well, for the first month, I didn't do anything. I didn't go out the house, I didn't answer the phone to anyone, just sat in the house, didn't really watch TV because I didn't want to watch racing, didn't do anything. And in the end, my mum came over and she took me home, and she sorted me out, you know, she made me better. I wasn't a very well girl for a little while, and she made me better, and I've got a brilliant family unit at home. And I just kind of got back into my own horses. I've got a yard back at home as well, and I built that back up again, and I started eventer trialling and doing hunter trials, and, you know, and I hunted, and I was a huntsman's groom for a good couple of months and really enjoyed myself. So I was hunting 3 days a week, so I've stayed pretty fit.
While you were going through this absence from the game, did you feel that whatever happened within the 2 years of your ban that you were subsequently given, you would definitely be back as a jockey within those 2 years?
It was at first. I was so determined. In actual fact, I was so determined to clear my name, because don't get me wrong, they took race riding away from me, they took my livelihood away from me, but they branded me corrupt, and that was so hard to deal with. Anywhere I went to a casino in London and got turned away at the door because I was branded a corrupt person. You know, I couldn't go into a casino in the UK. Yeah, it's just, it doesn't warrant really thinking about what actually did happen. I look back now and I kind of half think to myself, how did you cope with all that? You know, but it just seemed to be one thing after another thing after another thing. But I think I had good family around me, good friends, text messages off everybody, you know, and it was it's just all a little bit of a blur because there didn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of waiting.
Obviously mentally it's going to affect you, but what about financially as well? I mean, we know that solicitors and lawyers, etc., are not cheap. Presumably the whole process cost a relative fortune.
Absolute fortune. Scary. Really, really scary. It will take me a long time to ever earn that money back, and I'll be paying for it for a long time.
Are we right to feel, Kirsty, that the BHA will have to pay some of your costs, that you will be reimbursed?
Yeah, they're looking into it, but my main priority is just to get back on the track, be fit, be mentally right to be out there, and you know, carry on. Nobody actually knows the fact that my solicitor left me 4 days before the appeal because I ran out of money and I couldn't pay him. You know, and you can't expect anybody to work and not get paid. So I only had my QC there, but Ian Winter is a fantastic man, and I owe him my career. You know, I owe him a lot, and I'll be very, very grateful for the rest of my life for Ian Winters. He's an amazing man.
We know that when jockeys get injured, the Injured Jockeys Fund comes to the fore and does great work helping the riders out. Obviously, you've missed 4 months of riding income. Is there any way you can get any of that money back?
No, there's no recoup there. The only payment I received out of the Jockey Club or the BHA is a £4,000 insurance, which I got within the first week of being charged. It's the first cheque I made out to my solicitor. That's it.
No doubt the British Horse Racing Authority would say that the system has worked perfectly. They felt that you were guilty of a crime, they inquired into it, they found you guilty, they banned you for 2 years. You then appealed because you felt you had been unfairly treated, and then you won your appeal, and now you can come back. What would you say to the British Horse Racing Authority if they did say that to you?
I understand that they had a job they had to do. I'm not a bitter person. I'm going to try not to be bitter towards, you know, what's happened. In a way, grateful is the wrong word, but it's made me a better person, I think. I've grown up an awful lot. I've realised what's important to me, and I've actually realised how important my racing career is, and I did throw quite a lot of it away, and I'm not going to do that again.
Obviously the whole process presumably gives a message to all jockeys and people associated with horse racing that you have to be very careful who you're talking to, particularly on your mobile phone.
Definitely. Just don't be naive, and you know, if somebody does ring your phone and you don't know the number, just think twice to ringing it back and things like that. And really it's sad because it makes you a very suspicious person, but you know, in a way, I've overturned this verdict that they gave, and in a way I hope it's helped me, but if it helps anybody else that does get proved guilty when they are actually innocent, then you know, I've done half of my job really with appealing. And just be very careful, and you know, and enjoy what you do and don't take it for granted.
There'll be people watching this, Kirsty, who will be thinking to themselves, Kieran Fallon was accused of a lot of things, he escaped any punishment. You've now been accused of corruption and you've appealed and you've been successful. You've got to understand, there'll be people watching this thinking, crikey, how is it that they're always innocent and there are others serving penalties at this time?
I can't talk for people's opinions on Kieran, but from me, the trainers I've had support off of is unbelievable, and the friends and the owners. And I said all the way along to everybody that ever questioned me, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. And all those people stuck by me, and I think if you know me, you know I didn't do anything wrong, you know. And I'm just going to be very, very careful in the future.
So what about the future? I know you probably won't want me to say this, but before we started this conversation, you were saying you were really nervous about getting back into the saddle. How much, though, are you looking forward to it? You must be excited.
I'm excited even to ride work in the morning, you know, so I can't wait to get to the races. But I did say I was nervous about my first few rides back because I haven't sat on a thoroughbred for going on 4.5 months, you know.
You've been eventing, you've sat on horses.
Yeah, but I haven't pulled my jerks up and I haven't, you know, gone quite that fast. But it's good, yeah, and I've been hunting, so I think it's just probably more, I'm nervous about seeing people. You know, when you walk into places and get stared at for the wrong reasons, it makes you a little self-conscious. So I'm a little bit worried about going back to the race course. But I've had lots and lots and lots of cards, flowers, messages. Nervous, but I'll be all right once I'm up on that horse. I'll be fine.
We were saying a little earlier that in 2008 you were the champion apprentice during the all-weather season, the 2007-2008 campaign. You were mixing it with the Hayley Turners, and you should be mixing it with the Kathy Gannons in 2012. You must be really hopeful of doing that.
Well, I certainly work hard enough to be up there as well. You know, I'm not saying anybody else works harder than anyone, but I was very unlucky with this case because I'd found 2 really nice horses in James Toller's yard actually, and more in Luca's yard last year. Saigon and Rewarded are going to be very special, I believe, this year, and I'm going to go in and see him this week and or next week. And
just touched off in the Mill Reef, Saigon. I mean, it ran really well.
Yes, I was jocked off. Moving on.
You'd won the maiden.
Yeah, and the listed race at Newbury. But no, they're really, really nice, nice horses, and you know, the girls they've both had their problems too. They both had injuries as well, you know, and they're doing fantastically. But you know, if I can get back and I'm going to ride out for as many people as I can. I'm going to give it such a shot this year. I haven't got any other distractions. There's not going to be any other distractions. My main thing now is my career, and that's the way it should have been for a long time.